Street Farmer by Elizabeth Royte. Street Farmer. Background. Many people, especially those in large cities, have begun to turn to urban farming as a way to meet new challenges in feeding growing populations. Urban farming allows people to grow local produce in places where fresh foods are a luxury, like inner cities. The availability of local produce in urban areas cuts down on food miles, the distance some people, especially the poor in the inner city, have to travel to shop at a grocery store. In many urban areas, including New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, and Milwaukee, a growing number of residents and organizations are farming in areas of the inner city that have been abandoned or underdeveloped. One of these urban farms is in the heart of Milwaukee, near the city's largest public housing project, and is run by Will Allen, a former professional basketball player. Read this article from the New York Times Magazine to learn more about the street farmer, Will Allen, and his efforts to bring farming and fresh food to the inner city. Street Farmer by Elizabeth Royte, The New York Times Magazine, July 1st, 2009. Will Allen, a farmer of Bunyan-esque proportions, ascended a berm of wood chips and brewer's mash and gently probed it with a pitchfork. "Look at this," he said, pleased with the treasure he unearthed. A writhing mass of red worms dangled from his tines. He bent over, raked another section with his fingers, and palmed a few beauties. It was one of those April days in Wisconsin when the weather shifts abruptly from hot to cold, and Allen, dressed in a sleeveless hoodie, his daily uniform down to 20 degrees below, which he adds another sweatshirt, was exactly where he wanted to be. Show Allen a pile of soil, fully composted or still slimy with banana peels, and he's compelled to scoop some into his melon-sized hands. "Creating soil from waste is what I enjoy most," he said. "Anyone can grow food." Like others in the so-called good food movement, Allen, who is 60, asserts that our industrial food system is depleting soil, poisoning water, gobbling fossil fuels, and stuffing us with bad calories. Like others, he advocates eating locally grown food. But to Allen, local doesn't mean a rolling pasture or even a suburban garden. It means 14 greenhouses crammed onto 2 acres in a working class neighborhood on Milwaukee's northwest side, less than a mile from the city's largest public housing project. And this is why Allen is so fond of his worms. When you're producing $250,000 worth of food in such a small space, soil fertility is everything. Without microbe and nutrient rich worm castings, poop that is, Allen's growing power farm couldn't provide healthful food to 10,000 urbanites through his on farm retail store, in schools and restaurants, at farmers markets, and in low cost market baskets delivered to neighborhood pickup points. He couldn't employ scores of people, some from the nearby housing project, continually train farmers in extensive polyculture, or convert millions of pounds of food waste into a version of black gold. With seeds planted at quadruple density and nearly every inch of space maximized to generate exceptional bounty, growing power is an agricultural Mumbai, a supercity of upward thrusting tendrils and duct-taped infrastructure. Allen pointed to 5 tiers of planters brimming with salad greens. "We're growing in 25,000 pots," he said. Ducking his 6'7" frame under one of them, he pussyfooted down a leaf-crammed aisle. "We grow 1,000 trays of sprouts a week. Every square foot brings in $30. He headed toward the in-ground fish tank stocked with tens of thousands of tilapia and perch. Pumps send the dirty fish water up into beds of watercress, which filter pollutants and trickle the cleaner water back down to the fish, a symbiotic system called aquaponics. The watercress sells for $16 a pound. The fish fetch $6 apiece. Onward through the hoop houses, rows of beets and chard. Out back, chickens, ducks, heritage turkeys, goats, beehives. While Aaron narrated, I nibbled the scenery: spinach, arugula, cilantro. He mentions Mumbai, and Mumbai is a very, very major, very crowded, very, very busy city in India. Another picture of Mumbai and an older picture of Mumbai. This is a picture of Allen's gardens. This is what they mean by a hoop house. They make it with a hooped roof like this, and those are his greenhouses where he has things growing. And you can see his greenhouses are in layers, he said, where there's almost like those apartment buildings, the skyscrapers where everything has rows of things going up and up, so you're using every inch of space. If inside the greenhouse was Eden, outdoors was, as Allen explained on a drive through the neighborhood, a food desert. Scanning the liquor stores and the strip malls, he noted, from the housing project, it's more than 3 miles to the Pick and Save. That's a long way to go for groceries if you don't have a car or can't carry stuff, and the quality of the produce can be poor. Fast food joints and convenience stores selling highly processed, high-calorie foods, on the other hand, were locally abundant. It's a form of redlining, Allen said. We've got to change the system so everyone has safe, equitable access to healthy food. Propelled by alarming rates of diabetes, heart disease, and obesity, by food safety scares, and rising awareness of industrial agriculture's environmental footprint, the food movement seems finally to have met its moment. First Lady Michelle Obama and Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack have planted organic vegetable gardens. Roof gardens are sprouting nationwide. Community gardens have waiting lists. Seed houses and canning suppliers are oversold. Allen, too, has achieved a certain momentum for his efforts to bring the good food movement to the inner city. In the last several years, he has become a darling in the foundation world. In 2005, he received a $100,000 Ford Foundation Leadership Grant. In 2008, the MacArthur Foundation honored Allen with a $500,000 Genius Award. And in May, the Kellogg Foundation gave Allen $400,000 to create jobs in urban agriculture. Today, Allen is the go-to expert on urban farming, and there is a hunger for his knowledge. When I visited Growing Power, Allen was conducting a 2-day workshop for 40 people. Each paid $325 to learn worm composting, aquaponics construction, and other farm skills. We need 50 million more people growing food, Allen told them, on porches, in pots, in side yards. The reasons are simple. As oil prices rise, cities expand, and housing developments replace farmland, the ability to grow more food in less space becomes ever more important. As Allen can't help reminding us with a mischievous smile, Chicago has 72,000 vacant lots. Allen led the composting group to a pair of wooden bins and instructed his students to load them with hay. Okay, you've got your carbon, he said. Where are you going to get your nitrogen? Food waste, a young man offered, wiping his brow. Allen pointed him toward a mound of expired asparagus collected from a wholesaler. As the participants layered the materials in a bin, Allen drilled them. How much of that food is solid versus water weight? Why do we water the compost? The farmers in training hung on every word. If Alan at times seems a bit weary, he recites his talking points countless times a day. He comes alive when he's digging, seeding, and watering. His body straightens and his face brightens. Sitting in my office isn't a very comfortable thing for me, he told me later, seated in his office. I want to be out there doing physical stuff. Which includes basic research. Warned by experts that his red wigglers would freeze during Milwaukee's long winter, Allen studied the worms for 5 years, learning their food and shelter preferences. I'd run my experiments over and over and over, just like an athlete operates. And then he worked out systems for procuring food wood chips from the city and food scraps from markets and wholesalers. Last year, he took in 6 million pounds of spoiled food, which would otherwise rot in landfills and generate methane, a potent greenhouse gas. Every 4 months, he creates another 100,000 pounds of compost, of which he uses a quarter and sells the rest. Uncannily, Alan makes such efforts sound simple, fun even. When he mentions that animal waste attracts soldier flies, whose larvae make terrific fish and chicken feed, a dozen people start imagining that growing grubs in buckets of manure might be a good project for them too. Will has a way of persuading people to do things, Robert Pierce, a farmer in Madison, Wisconsin, told me. There's a spirit in how he says things. You want to be part of his community.